Sarah Martinez walked through the gates of Northfield High School on a crisp Monday morning in September. Her worn backpack slung over one shoulder and her head down. At 17, she had already attended 4 different schools in 3 years, and she knew the routine by heart. New faces would stare, whispers would follow, and she would once again become the subject of curious speculation. The hallways buzzed with the familiar sounds of teenage life. Lockers slammed shut, friends called out to each other, and the underlying tension of academic pressure hung in the air like morning fog. Sarah found her locker quickly, memorizing the combination with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. She kept her movements small and deliberate, hoping to avoid drawing attention to herself. "Hey, you're the new girl, right?" A voice behind her made her turn around. A tall boy with sandy hair and a friendly smile stood there, flanked by 2 other students. "I'm Jake, and this is Emma and Tyler. Welcome to Northfield." Sarah offered a small smile in return. "Thanks, I'm Sarah." She had learned to be polite but distant. Friendships were complicated when you never knew how long you would be staying in one place. Emma, a petite girl with curly red hair, stepped forward with genuine warmth. "Where did you transfer from?" "We don't get many new students this late in junior year." "Military family," Sarah replied using the explanation she had perfected over the years. It was technically true, though not in the way most people assumed. "We move around a lot." The 3 students exchanged understanding looks. Northfield was located near a large naval base, and military families were common in the area. They had seen kids come and go before, carrying the quiet resilience that came with constant relocation. "Well, if you need help finding your classes or anything, just let us know," Jake offered. "What's your first period?" Sarah checked her schedule. "AP Physics with Mr. Chen." Tyler's eyebrows shot up. "Wow, jumping right into the deep end. Chen's class is no joke. But don't worry, Emma here is basically a genius at physics. She can help you catch up if you need it." As they walked toward the science wing, Sarah found herself relaxing slightly. These students seemed genuinely kind, not just curious about the new arrival. Emma chatted about the school's traditions. Jake pointed out important locations like the library and cafeteria, and Tyler shared warnings about which teachers to avoid when possible. The physics classroom was a testament to organized chaos. Laboratory equipment lined the walls and complex equations covered multiple whiteboards. Mr. Chen, a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from his desk as the students entered. "You must be Sarah Martinez," he said, consulting his roster. "Welcome to Advanced Physics. We're currently working on electromagnetic theory. I hope you have a strong foundation in calculus." Sarah nodded quietly and took the seat Emma indicated near the back of the classroom. As Mr. Chen began his lesson on electromagnetic induction, Sarah found herself genuinely engaged for the first time in weeks. The concepts were familiar territory for her, though she was careful not to appear too knowledgeable. During the lab portion of the class, students were tasked with building simple electromagnetic devices. Sarah watched as her classmates struggled with the wiring and calculations. When Emma's group couldn't get their device to function properly, Sarah quietly suggested a modification to their circuit design. "How did you know that would work?" Emma asked, watching their device suddenly spring to life with perfect precision. Sarah shrugged casually. "Lucky guess. I've always been good with electronics." After physics, Sarah navigated through her other morning classes: advanced literature, AP history, and calculus. She maintained her pattern of quiet competence, participating just enough to avoid unwanted attention, but never showcasing the full extent of her knowledge. At lunch, Jake waved her over to sit with his group at a table near the windows. The cafeteria was typical of American high schools everywhere: loud, crowded, and filled with the complex social hierarchies that teenagers created for themselves. "So what does your dad do in the military?" Tyler asked between bites of his sandwich. "My uncle was in the Army. He always had the craziest stories." Sarah paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Naval operations. It's pretty specialized work." Again, technically true, though the full picture was far more complex than her classmates could imagine. "That explains why you're so good at physics," Emma said admiringly. "You probably grew up around all sorts of technical stuff." As lunch continued, Sarah learned about her new classmates' lives. Jake played on the football team and was considering engineering programs at various colleges. Emma excelled in mathematics and science, dreaming of a career in research. Tyler was the class comedian, but also a talented artist who spent his free time creating digital animations. They were good kids, Sarah realized. Smart, ambitious, and kind. The type of teenagers who represented the best of their generation. It made what she knew about her likely departure all the more bittersweet. The afternoon brought chemistry, world literature, and finally, her last class of the day, contemporary issues in government. As she entered the classroom, Sarah noticed the walls were covered with political maps, constitutional amendments, and current event articles. Mrs. Patterson, an energetic woman in her 40s, greeted each student by name as they took their seats. When she reached Sarah, she paused with interest. "Sarah Martinez, welcome. I see from your transcript that you've attended schools all over the country. That must give you a unique perspective on how different regions approach political and social issues." Sarah nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am. It's been educational." As the class discussed current naval policies and international relations, Sarah found herself biting her tongue repeatedly. The students' understanding was surface level at best, based primarily on news reports and social media. She could have corrected their misconceptions, provided insider insights that would have amazed them, but instead she remained silent, occasionally nodding as if learning something new. When the final bell rang, Sarah gathered her book slowly. Tomorrow would bring another day of careful performance, of being just smart enough to fit in but not so knowledgeable as to raise questions. As she walked toward her locker, she wondered how long this assignment would last, and whether she would have time to form real friendships, before duty called her elsewhere once again. The weight of her secret felt heavier than usual as she stepped out into the afternoon sun, just another teenager heading home from school, carrying secrets that could reshape everything her new friends thought they knew about their world. 3 weeks into the semester, Sarah had settled into a comfortable routine at Northfield High School. She had successfully maintained her carefully crafted image as a bright but unremarkable military kid, and her friendship with Jake, Emma, and Tyler had grown stronger each day. For the first time in months, she almost felt like a normal teenager. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday morning when Principal Davidson's voice crackled over the intercom during second period. "Sarah Martinez, please report to the main office immediately. Bring your belongings." Every head in the AP literature classroom turned toward Sarah. Mrs. Henderson paused mid-sentence in her analysis of Hamlet, and Sarah felt 20 pairs of curious eyes studying her reaction. Her stomach dropped, recognizing the tone and urgency of the announcement. "Is everything okay?" Emma whispered from the next desk, concern evident in her voice. Sarah forced a calm smile while her mind raced through possibilities. "I'm sure it's nothing. Probably just paperwork from my last school." She gathered her books with steady hands, though her heart pounded against her ribs. The walk to the main office felt like a funeral march. Students she had come to know over the past 3 weeks watched her pass with confused expressions. Word traveled fast in high schools, and by the time she reached the administrative wing, several classmates had already texted their friends about the mysterious summons. Principal Davidson, a kind woman in her 50s, waited for Sarah in the main lobby. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Sarah caught the subtle signs of stress around her eyes. Standing beside the principal was a man Sarah had hoped she wouldn't see for several more months. Commander Richardson wore civilian clothes, but his military bearing was unmistakable. Tall and lean, with graying hair and sharp intelligence in his dark eyes, he commanded attention even in the mundane setting of a high school office. Sarah had worked with Richardson before, and his presence here meant only one thing. "Miss Martinez," Principal Davidson said softly, "this is Mr. Richardson from the Department of Education. He needs to speak with you about your academic records." Sarah nodded, playing her role perfectly. "Of course. Is there a problem with my transcripts?" Richardson stepped forward with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing serious, just some verification issues we need to resolve. We'll need to speak privately." They were led to a small conference room typically used for parent-teacher meetings. Once the door closed, Richardson's demeanor shifted completely. The friendly educational bureaucrat disappeared, replaced by the seasoned naval intelligence officer Sarah knew him to be. "Admiral," he said quietly, his voice carrying both respect and urgency, "we need to extract you immediately." Sarah felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle back onto her shoulders like a heavy coat. After 3 weeks of being just Sarah the teenager, she was being pulled back into her real identity. At 17, she was the youngest admiral in naval history, a genius strategist whose insights had prevented international conflicts and saved countless lives. "What's the situation?" she asked, her voice automatically taking on the crisp authority that had earned her rapid promotion through the ranks. "Intelligence suggests a coordinated attack on 3 major naval installations, including the base here at Northfield. The enemy has somehow obtained detailed information about our defensive capabilities. We need your strategic analysis before they move." Richardson consulted his watch. "The Joint Chiefs are waiting for you in Washington." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of Emma's excitement about their upcoming physics project, Jake's invitation to Friday's football game, and Tyler's promise to show her his latest animation. 3 weeks of normal teenage life was ending as abruptly as it had begun. "How much time do I have?" she asked. "A car is waiting outside. Your cover story is a family emergency requiring immediate relocation. Principal Davidson has been briefed with classified clearance about military family protocols." Through the conference room window, Sarah could see students moving between classes. Jake was at his locker, probably wondering why she hadn't returned to literature class. Emma would be saving her a seat at lunch. They had no idea that their new friend was about to disappear from their lives as suddenly as she had appeared. "The enemy intelligence," Sarah said, shifting into her analytical mode. "Do we know how they obtained our defensive specifications?" Richardson's expression grew darker. "That's part of why we need you. There's evidence of an inside source. Someone with high-level clearance has been feeding information to hostile forces. The attack is scheduled for this weekend, during the base's Family Day festivities." The implications hit Sarah immediately. Hundreds of military families would be on the base for the annual celebration. Children, spouses, grandparents, all potential casualties if the enemy succeeded in their coordinated strike. Her personal disappointment about leaving school seemed insignificant compared to the lives at stake. "I'll need the complete intelligence files during transport," she said, already planning her approach to the problem. "And access to satellite imagery from the past month." "Everything is prepared," Richardson confirmed. "Your temporary replacement identity is Amanda Chen, transferred to a private academy in California. Your academic records here will show a family relocation due to a sudden military deployment." Sarah stood up, smoothing down her school clothes one final time. In a few hours, she would be back in her naval uniform, surrounded by high-ranking officers who looked to her for solutions to impossible problems. But right now, she was still Sarah Martinez, the quiet new girl who had to say goodbye to the closest thing to a normal life she had ever experienced. "I need 5 minutes," she said. Richardson checked his watch again. "Admiral, we really should—" "5 minutes," she repeated, and the steel in her voice reminded him exactly who he was addressing. She found Emma at her locker, organizing her books for the next class. When Emma saw her approaching with her backpack, her face fell with understanding. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Emma asked quietly. "Family emergency," Sarah said, using the cover story but wishing she could tell the truth. "We have to move immediately." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I knew it was too good to be true. You're the first friend I've made who actually understood calculus jokes." Sarah felt her own throat tighten. "You're brilliant, Emma. Don't let anyone tell you that girls can't excel in physics. You have what it takes to change the world." They hugged briefly, and Sarah had to pull away before her carefully maintained composure cracked entirely. Jake and Tyler appeared at the end of the hallway, having heard about her departure through the school's gossip network. "This sucks," Tyler said bluntly when she explained the situation. 3 weeks isn't enough time to be proper friends. Maybe we can keep in touch," Jake suggested hopefully. "Social media, texting, whatever." Sarah nodded, though she knew it would be impossible. Admiral Sarah Chen couldn't maintain teenage friendships without compromising national security. The girl these students had befriended would cease to exist the moment she left the school grounds. As she walked toward the main office for the last time, Sarah glanced back at her friends. Emma was wiping her eyes. Tyler was sketching something in his notebook that looked suspiciously like a farewell cartoon, and Jake was staring after her with the confused expression of someone who sensed there was more to the story than he was being told. Principal Davidson was waiting with paperwork that would officially erase Sarah Martinez from Northfield High School's records. Within hours, it would be as if she had never existed, leaving behind only the memories of 3 students who had briefly known a girl who understood physics too well, spoke too carefully about her father's work, and disappeared as mysteriously as she had arrived. The car ride to the airport would give her time to review the intelligence files and prepare for the challenge ahead. But as she left Northfield High School, Sarah allowed herself one moment of grief for the normal life she was leaving behind, and the friends who would never know they had helped save their own country. The Pentagon at 3 in the morning was a different world from Northfield High School's bustling hallways. Sarah walked through corridors lined with portraits of military heroes, her civilian clothes now replaced by the crisp naval uniform that bore the insignia of her true rank. The stars on her shoulders seemed to weigh more heavily than usual as she approached the briefing room where the Joint Chiefs of Staff waited. Commander Richardson had briefed her during the flight from California to Washington. The intelligence was worse than initially reported. 3 coordinated attacks were planned for Saturday morning, targeting Naval Station Norfolk, Naval Base San Diego, and most critically, Naval Base Northfield. The enemy had obtained not just defensive specifications, but also detailed information about personnel schedules, security rotations, and family event planning. Admiral Chen, General Morrison greeted her as she entered the secure briefing room. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs was a decorated veteran, whose strategic mind had guided the nation through several international crises. Even he looked tired and concerned as he gestured toward the wall of monitors displaying satellite imagery. "Intelligence reports and threat assessments, gentlemen," Sarah said, taking her place at the conference table. Despite her youth, every officer in the room had learned to respect her analytical abilities. She had earned her rank through brilliant strategic thinking, not through favors or political connections. "The situation is critical," Admiral Foster from Naval Intelligence began. "Our sources indicate the attacks are being coordinated by a sophisticated enemy organization with inside knowledge of our operations. They've been planning this for months, possibly years." Sarah studied the intelligence briefings projected on the main screen. Intercepted communications, financial transfers, and surveillance footage painted a picture of meticulous planning. But something bothered her about the pattern of information gathering. "The timing troubles me," she said, pulling up additional data on her tablet. "Why target Family Day events? The military value is minimal compared to the potential backlash from civilian casualties." "Maximum psychological impact," suggested Colonel Martinez from Strategic Planning. "Terror attacks against families would severely damage public support for military operations." Sarah shook her head. "No, there's something else. The intelligence they've gathered is too specific, too current. This isn't just about creating fear." She manipulated the data displays, looking for connections her colleagues might have missed. "What are you thinking, Admiral?" General Morrison asked. "The enemy knows exactly when our security will be most dispersed, when our attention will be focused on protecting civilians rather than defending critical installations." Sarah's fingers flew across the tablet, cross-referencing personnel assignments with the stolen intelligence. "This is a diversionary tactic." She stood and walked to the main display, highlighting specific data points. "Look at the pattern of information requests. Someone has been systematically gathering intelligence about our advanced weapons research programs. The Family Day attacks are designed to draw our defensive resources away from the real targets." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. While military personnel were focused on protecting their families during the weekend celebrations, critical research facilities would be vulnerable to the real attack. "The submarine warfare development program at Norfolk," Admiral Foster said grimly. "The new stealth technology at San Diego. And the quantum communication project at Northfield," Sarah finished. 3 programs that could revolutionize naval warfare. Someone wants to steal decades of research. General Morrison leaned forward. "Can you identify the inside source?" Sarah had been dreading this question, though she had suspected the answer since reviewing the intelligence files on the plane. The pattern of information access pointed to someone with extraordinary clearance levels, someone who had been involved in all 3 research programs over the past 2 years. "Admiral Hendricks," she said quietly. The name sent shockwaves through the room. Admiral William Hendricks was a respected 30-year veteran who had overseen naval research and development for the past decade. He was also Sarah's mentor, the man who had recognized her potential and sponsored her rapid advancement through the ranks. "That's a serious accusation, Admiral," General Morrison said carefully. Do you have proof? Sarah displayed her analysis on the main screen. The intelligence gathering began 18 months ago, shortly after Admiral Hendricks was passed over for promotion to Chief of Naval Operations. The data access patterns match his security clearance and travel schedule perfectly. She pulled up additional information that painted a devastating picture. Financial records showing unexplained deposits into offshore accounts. Travel records that coincided with known enemy agent movements. Communication metadata that suggested encrypted conversations with foreign contacts. He's been selling our secrets to fund his retirement, Sarah concluded, and he's planning one final operation to steal the research data while simultaneously destroying the evidence of his betrayal. Admiral Foster shook his head in disbelief. Bill Hendricks trained half the officers in this room. Why would he do this? Bitterness, Sarah said simply. He believed he deserved the promotion that went to someone else. He felt overlooked and underappreciated, so he decided to profit from his access while he still could. The weight of the betrayal hung heavy in the room. Admiral Hendricks had been trusted with the Navy's most sensitive secrets, and he had sold that trust for personal gain. Worse, his plan would result in the deaths of innocent families if it succeeded. What's our counter-strategy? General Morrison asked. Sarah had been developing her response during the briefing. We need to convince Admiral Hendricks that his plan is working while we prepare our real defense. He expects us to focus our resources on protecting the family events. Instead, we'll use that expectation against him. She outlined her strategy with the clarity that had made her reputation. We'll deploy visible security measures at the family events, making it appear that we're falling for the diversion. Meanwhile, we'll secretly reinforce the research facilities with hidden defenses. When the real attack comes, we'll be ready. And Hendricks himself? Admiral Foster asked. He'll be arrested during the operation, Sarah said. We'll need to coordinate with FBI counterintelligence to ensure we gather enough evidence for prosecution. As the meeting concluded and assignments were distributed, Sarah felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and sadness that came with solving a complex strategic puzzle. She had identified the threat and developed a response that would save lives and protect critical national secrets. But she had also exposed the betrayal of a man who had been like a father to her in the military. Outside the Pentagon, dawn was breaking over Washington. In a few hours, she would be back at Naval Base Northfield, coordinating the defense of the facility where she had briefly attended high school as Sarah Martinez. Emma, Jake, and Tyler would be starting their school day, unaware that their former classmate was working to protect their community from a devastating attack. As Sarah prepared to return to California, she wondered if her friends would ever learn the truth about who she really was. Probably not. Classified operations rarely made it into high school history books. But she took comfort in knowing that their normal teenage lives would continue, protected by defenses they would never know existed. The car ride to Andrews Air Force Base gave her time to finalize the operational plans for Saturday's defense. In 36 hours, she would either prevent a catastrophic attack or watch months of careful planning crumble under enemy fire. Either way, Admiral Sarah Chen was ready to fulfill her duty to protect the nation, even if it meant sacrificing the simple joys of being 17 years old. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, her heart skipped, wondering if somehow one of her Northfield friends had managed to track down her real contact information. But the message was from Richardson, confirming her flight departure time. Sarah Martinez, the quiet new girl from Northfield High, was gone forever. Admiral Chen had work to do. Friday morning at Naval Base Northfield buzzed with activity, as families prepared for the weekend celebration. Children played on the lawn while their parents set up picnic tables and decorations. The annual Family Day had been a beloved tradition for over 20 years, bringing together military personnel and their loved ones for a day of games, demonstrations, and community bonding. Sarah stood in the base commander's office, watching the cheerful preparations through bulletproof windows. She wore the uniform of a visiting naval intelligence officer, her admiral's insignia carefully concealed beneath a standard lieutenant commander's jacket. To the families outside, she appeared to be just another military professional helping coordinate security for the event. The perimeter teams are in position, reported Captain Williams, the base security chief. He had been briefed on the real threat level, but instructed to maintain normal operations for the benefit of any watchers. Visible security is exactly what Admiral Hendricks would expect to see. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed the base layout. Hidden throughout the facility, her carefully positioned teams waited with equipment that wouldn't be visible to casual observation. Motion sensors disguised as landscaping equipment. Snipers positioned in maintenance areas that appeared unoccupied. Electronic warfare specialists ready to jam enemy communications from seemingly empty office buildings. "Any word from Hendricks?" she asked. "He arrived this morning for the family event," Captain Williams confirmed, playing the part of the concerned mentor checking on security arrangements. "He's been asking questions about our defensive positions." Through her earpiece, Sarah heard regular updates from the surveillance team tracking Admiral Hendricks' movements. He had spent the morning greeting families and inspecting visible security measures, all while secretly photographing defensive positions and transmitting encrypted messages to his foreign contacts. "Admiral Chen," came a voice through her secure communication device. "This is Watchtower. We've identified 3 teams of enemy operatives positioning themselves around the perimeter. They're using the family day crowds for cover." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. After months of planning, the operation was finally beginning. "Confirmed, Watchtower. Maintain surveillance but do not engage unless they pose immediate threat to civilians." She moved to the command center that had been secretly established in the base's administrative building. Banks of monitors showed feeds from hidden cameras throughout the facility, while communication specialists coordinated with teams at Naval Station Norfolk and Naval Base San Diego, where similar operations were unfolding simultaneously. "Status report from Norfolk," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station. "They've identified enemy infiltrators near the submarine research facility. San Diego reports similar activity around their stealth technology labs." Sarah studied the synchronized timing. All 3 locations were experiencing enemy movement at the same time, confirming her analysis that this was a coordinated operation designed to steal critical research while everyone's attention was focused on protecting the family celebrations. Her tablet chimed with an encrypted message from Admiral Hendricks. "Security looks good for the family event. I'm proud of how well you've prepared our defenses." The message appeared innocent to any outside observer, but Sarah recognized it as confirmation to his handlers that the base's attention was focused in the wrong direction. "Phase 2 is beginning," she announced to her team. "Enemy forces are moving into position for the real attack." Through the windows, the family day celebration continued peacefully. Parents watched their children participate in 3-legged races, while teenagers enjoyed a demonstration of naval aircraft. Jake, Emma, and Tyler were probably in their second period classes at Northfield High, completely unaware that a battle for national security was developing less than 5 miles from their school. "Contact from Quantum Lab," reported Sergeant Chen from the security station. "Unauthorized personnel attempting to breach the research facility through the ventilation system." Sarah's carefully laid plans began to activate. Hidden security teams emerged from their concealed positions, moving with practiced efficiency to intercept the enemy operatives. Electronic jamming equipment disrupted the attackers' communications while motion sensors tracked their every movement through the facility. "Admiral Hendricks is requesting access to the Quantum Communications Lab," Captain Williams reported. "Claims he needs to check on the security of classified materials during the family event." "Grant his request," Sarah ordered. "But make sure our surveillance team has eyes on him at all times." She watched the tactical display as Admiral Hendricks made his way toward the research facility that housed the Navy's most advanced communication technology. For months he had been feeding intelligence to enemy agents, and now he was positioning himself to personally steal the final pieces of data they needed. "Watchtower, this is Command," Sarah spoke into her headset. "Confirm visual on Admiral Hendricks entering Quantum Lab." "Confirmed, Command. Subject is alone and appears to be accessing computer terminals in Lab 7. Sarah felt a mixture of sadness and determination. In a few minutes, she would have to order the arrest of the man who had mentored her, who had seen her potential when others doubted that someone so young could contribute meaningfully to naval strategy. But Admiral Hendricks had made his choice when he decided to betray his oath and endanger innocent lives. "Movement detected at the main research building," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Multiple hostiles breaching through service entrances." The enemy's real assault was beginning. While Admiral Hendricks accessed classified files from inside the facility, his foreign partners were moving to extract both him and the stolen data. Sarah's hidden defenses activated in sequence, intercepting the attackers before they could reach their objectives. Defensive teams Alpha through Delta. You are cleared to engage, Sarah ordered. Protect civilian areas at all costs, but do not allow enemy forces to reach the research facilities. Through her earpiece, she heard the controlled chaos of military operations unfolding across the base. Her carefully positioned teams moved to intercept enemy operatives while maintaining the appearance that they were simply responding to an unexpected attack. The Family Day celebration continued under increased but non-alarming security, with most attendees unaware of the battle being fought for their protection. Command. This is Quantum Team, came an urgent voice. Admiral Hendricks has accessed the main server and is downloading classified files. What are your orders? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading since discovering the betrayal. Move in and secure Admiral Hendricks. Charge him with espionage and treason. As her teams closed in on the research facility, Sarah watched the family celebration outside. Children laughed as they bounced in an inflatable castle, while their parents chatted with other military families. These people had trusted the Navy to protect them and their secrets, and that trust had been betrayed by one of their own senior officers. Admiral Hendricks is in custody, reported the Quantum Team leader. We've secured the stolen data and identified his extraction route. Enemy operatives are being intercepted at multiple points around the facility. Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the implications would reverberate through the naval command structure for months to come. Admiral Hendricks' betrayal had compromised multiple operations and endangered countless lives. Status report from Norfolk and San Diego, she requested. Both operations successful, Lieutenant Rodriguez confirmed. Enemy teams have been captured or neutralized at all 3 locations. No civilian casualties reported. As the sun reached its peak over Naval Base Northfield, Sarah prepared to transition from combat operations to the complex process of investigation and cleanup that would follow. Admiral Hendricks would face court-martial for treason, while counterintelligence specialists would work to assess the full extent of the damage caused by his betrayal. But for now, the families celebrating outside could continue their peaceful day, protected by defenses they would never know had been activated on their behalf. Sarah had successfully fulfilled her duty to protect both the nation's secrets and its most precious assets, the people who served and their loved ones. 3 days after the operation, Sarah sat in a secure debriefing room at the Pentagon, facing a panel of senior officials who were still processing the magnitude of Admiral Hendricks' betrayal. The successful defense of the 3 naval facilities had prevented a catastrophic intelligence breach, but the investigation was revealing years of systematic espionage that had compromised dozens of classified operations. Admiral Chen, said Director Patterson from Naval Intelligence, consulting her thick briefing folder, your strategic analysis prevented what could have been the worst security breach in naval history. However, we need to discuss the implications of Admiral Hendricks' access to classified personnel files. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had been dreading this conversation since Hendricks' arrest. As her mentor, he had been involved in creating her cover identities for undercover assignments, including her recent placement at Northfield High School. He knows about your civilian identities, General Morrison confirmed grimly. Sarah Martinez, Amanda Chen, Katie Williams, all the personas you've used for intelligence gathering operations. We have to assume that information has been compromised. How much did he reveal? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Everything, Director Patterson replied. During interrogation, we discovered he had been building detailed dossiers on our most valuable undercover assets. Your real identity, your operational history, your family background, all of it was part of the intelligence package he was preparing to sell. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of Emma, Jake, and Tyler back at Northfield High School. They believed their friend Sarah Martinez had transferred to a private academy in California due to a family emergency. If Hendricks had revealed her true identity to enemy agents, those students could become targets for retaliation. What's the security assessment for Northfield? She asked. That's what we need to discuss, General Morrison said seriously. Foreign intelligence services now know that Admiral Sarah Chen attended Northfield High School under the identity of Sarah Martinez. They'll be investigating everyone who had contact with you during that assignment. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. In her effort to maintain a cover identity, she had formed genuine friendships with innocent teenagers who were now potential targets because of their association with her. Emma Thompson, Jake Wilson, and Tyler Rodriguez, she said quietly. They need protection. We've already initiated surveillance protocols, Director Patterson confirmed. But there's a complication. The enemy agents we captured during the base operation have been released. Sarah's head snapped up. Released? How is that possible? Diplomatic immunity, General Morrison explained with obvious frustration. They were operating undercover as cultural attachés and trade representatives. Despite the evidence of their involvement in espionage activities, we had to release them to avoid an international incident. The implications were terrifying. Enemy agents who knew about Sarah's true identity were now free to act on that information. They would certainly investigate her known associates, looking for leverage or opportunities for revenge. I need to return to Northfield, Sarah said immediately. Absolutely not, Director Patterson objected. You're too valuable an asset to risk on a protection detail. We'll assign other personnel to monitor your former classmates. With respect, ma'am, this is my responsibility, Sarah replied firmly. I put those students at risk by befriending them. I need to ensure their safety personally. General Morrison studied her for a long moment. Admiral, you're thinking with your heart instead of your head. That's not like you. Sarah stood and walked to the window overlooking the Pentagon's central courtyard. For the first time in her career, she was facing a situation where her duty as an officer conflicted with her personal feelings. Emma, Jake, and Tyler weren't just intelligence assets or operational complications. They were her friends. Those students represent the best of what we're fighting to protect, she said finally. They're smart, kind, and hopeful about the future. If we can't protect 3 innocent teenagers, what's the point of all our strategic planning and military might? The room fell silent as the senior officers considered her argument. Admiral Sarah Chen had never made a strategic decision based on emotion, and they all knew her analytical abilities were what made her so valuable. If she believed protecting her former classmates was strategically important, they needed to listen. What are you proposing? Director Patterson asked. Sarah turned back to face the panel, her decision made. I returned to Northfield as a transfer student. Different cover identity, different background story. I monitor the situation while providing direct protection for potential targets. That's extremely dangerous, General Morrison warned. If enemy agents are actively investigating your former identity, returning to the same location could expose you. It's also the last thing they'll expect, Sarah countered. They'll be looking for Admiral Sarah Chen to stay far away from Northfield. They won't anticipate that I'd return under a new cover to protect my former associates. Director Patterson pulled up Sarah's operational files on her tablet. You're requesting to return to high school for the 3rd time this year. That has to be some kind of record. I'm 17 years old, Sarah pointed out. High school is actually the perfect cover for someone my age, and I've proven I can maintain civilian identities effectively. General Morrison leaned back in his chair, considering the proposal. If we approve this operation, you would be on your own. No backup teams, no emergency extraction protocols. We can't risk exposing additional assets if the situation goes bad. Understood, Sarah replied. I'll need a completely clean identity with no connections to previous covers. And I'll need to be inserted in a way that doesn't raise questions about why another new student is arriving so soon, after Sarah Martinez transferred out. What about operational objectives? Director Patterson asked. Besides protecting your former classmates, what would this mission accomplish? Sarah had been thinking about this since learning of Hendrix's betrayal, intelligence gathering. If enemy agents are operating near Northfield, they'll eventually make contact with local assets. By maintaining a presence in the community, I can identify and neutralize potential threats before they develop into serious operations. The panel exchanged glances, engaging in the kind of silent communication that senior military officials had perfected over decades of working together. Finally, General Morrison nodded. We'll approve a limited operation, he decided. 30 days maximum. You'll return to Northfield under a new identity with orders to assess and neutralize any threats to your former associates. After that, you'll be reassigned to standard strategic planning duties. Sarah felt relief wash over her. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, Director Patterson warned. And Admiral, remember that you're not actually a teenager despite appearances. Don't let emotional attachments compromise your judgment or your safety. As the meeting concluded, Sarah began mentally preparing for her return to Northfield High School. This time she wouldn't be Sarah Martinez, the quiet military kid trying to blend in. She would be someone new, with a different story and different objectives. But she would also be watching over Emma, Jake, and Tyler, making sure that their friendship with a girl who never really existed wouldn't endanger their very real lives. The next morning, she would begin preparations to become someone else entirely, returning to the hallways and classrooms where she had briefly experienced the joy of being an ordinary teenager. But this time she would be there as Admiral Sarah Chen, protector and guardian, ensuring that innocence could survive in a world where even mentors could become traitors. 2 weeks later, Maya Patel walked through the doors of Northfield High School with the confidence of someone accustomed to new environments. Her backstory was simple and believable. Daughter of a software engineer who had relocated from Seattle for a job at a local tech company. Unlike Sarah Martinez, Maya was outgoing and immediately approachable, with an easy smile and genuine curiosity about her new classmates. She spotted Emma at her locker between classes, looking somewhat melancholy as she organized her physics textbooks. Sarah felt a pang of guilt, knowing that her abrupt departure as Sarah Martinez had hurt her friend more than she could ever explain. "Excuse me," Maya said, approaching Emma with carefully practiced uncertainty. "I'm new here and I'm totally lost. Could you help me find the chemistry lab?" Emma looked up and Sarah saw the automatic kindness that made her such a special person. "Of course. I'm Emma. Chemistry is just down this hall. Are you in Mr. Peterson's class?" "Yes, and I heard it's pretty challenging." "I'm Maya, by the way." Sarah extended her hand, noting how Emma's face brightened at the prospect of helping someone new. As they walked toward the chemistry lab, Emma chattered about the school's layout and the various teachers' personalities. Sarah listened carefully, noting changes in her friend's demeanor since her departure. Emma seemed more guarded, less openly trusting than she had been before. "We had another new student a few weeks ago," Emma mentioned casually. "Sarah Martinez. She seemed really nice, but then she had to transfer again because of family stuff. Military families, you know? It's hard when people can't stay." Sarah heard the carefully controlled sadness in Emma's voice and felt another wave of guilt. "That must have been disappointing," Maya replied sympathetically. "It's hard to lose a friend." "Yeah, well, you learn not to get too attached," Emma said with a shrug that didn't quite hide her hurt feelings. Over the following days, Maya Patel integrated seamlessly into the social fabric of Northfield High School. She joined study groups with Emma, attended football games with Jake, and laughed at Tyler's increasingly elaborate digital animations. Unlike Sarah Martinez, who had been careful to maintain emotional distance, Maya allowed herself to be genuinely friendly while remaining alert for any signs of surveillance or threat. The threats materialized exactly 2 weeks into her new assignment. During lunch on a Wednesday, Sarah noticed an unfamiliar man in a maintenance uniform lingering near the school's main entrance. His positioning allowed him to observe student movements while appearing to work on landscaping equipment. More concerning, he had photographed several students, including Emma, Jake, and Tyler. That afternoon, Sarah activated the emergency communication protocol she had established with Naval Intelligence. Using a secure app disguised as a social media platform, she reported the surveillance activity and requested background checks on the suspicious individual. The response came within hours. Ivan Petrov, known associate of the enemy agents who had been released after the naval base operation. He had entered the country on a tourist visa, but was certainly conducting intelligence operations targeting Sarah's former associates. "Maya, are you okay?" Emma asked during their shared physics class the next day. "You seem distracted." Sarah realized she had been unconsciously scanning the classroom windows for signs of external surveillance. "Sorry, just thinking about the homework assignment," she replied, forcing herself to focus on the present moment. But even as she participated in normal teenage activities, Sarah was conducting her own counter-surveillance operation. She identified 2 additional enemy agents who had taken positions around the school and the surrounding neighborhood. They were building detailed profiles of Emma, Jake, and Tyler, clearly preparing for some kind of approach or recruitment attempt. The situation escalated on Friday evening during the school's homecoming dance. Sarah, attending as Maya Patel, was dancing with a group of friends when she noticed Ivan Petrov had positioned himself outside the gymnasium with camera equipment. He was photographing students as they entered and left the dance, paying particular attention to Emma, who looked stunning in a blue dress that matched her eyes. "I'll be right back," Maya told her friends. "I need some fresh air." She slipped out of the gymnasium through a side exit, using skills learned in advanced tactical training to approach Petrov without being detected. He was focused on his photography, making encrypted voice notes about each student he observed. "Interesting camera," Maya said conversationally, appearing beside him as if she had simply wandered outside for a break from dancing. Petrov startled, fumbling to conceal his professional-grade surveillance equipment. "Just taking pictures of the school. American educational traditions are fascinating." "I'm sure they are," Maya replied, her voice taking on a harder edge. "But photographing minors without permission can create legal complications in this country." Their eyes met, and Sarah saw recognition flicker across Petrov's features. He had seen her intelligence photos from Admiral Hendrix's files and was putting together the pieces. Maya Patel, the friendly new student, was displaying knowledge and confidence that no ordinary teenager should possess. "You seem very knowledgeable about American law for someone so young," Petrov said carefully. "I seem very knowledgeable about a lot of things," Sarah replied, "including the fact that you and your associates need to leave this community immediately." Petrov reached for something inside his jacket, but Sarah was faster. Years of military training had given her reflexes that no civilian could match. She secured his weapon before he could draw it, simultaneously activating the emergency beacon that would summon backup from the Regional Naval Intelligence Office. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You have one chance to walk away from this situation. Take your team and leave Northfield tonight. If I see any of you near these students again, the consequences will be severe." Petrov stared at her with a mixture of fear and confusion. The intelligence photos had shown Admiral Sarah Chen in full naval uniform, a serious military officer who commanded strategy meetings at the Pentagon. But standing before him was a 17-year-old girl in a homecoming dress, displaying tactical skills that suggested extensive combat training. "You're her," he whispered. "You're actually her." "I'm Maya Patel, a high school student who really doesn't like photographers bothering her friends," Sarah replied calmly. "But if you prefer to think of me as Admiral Chen, that's fine too. Either way, you need to leave." The sound of approaching sirens indicated that her backup was arriving. Sarah had called in the surveillance as a potential threat to a naval installation, bringing federal law enforcement into the situation. "Your choice," she said to Petrov. "Explain to the FBI why you're photographing teenagers or disappear before they arrive." Petrov chose disappearance, melting into the darkness with the practiced ease of an experienced operative. Sarah watched him go, knowing that he would report back to his handlers that Admiral Sarah Chen was indeed in Northfield, protecting her former associates with deadly seriousness. When she returned to the gymnasium, Emma immediately noticed her changed demeanor. "Maya, what happened out there? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just some creepy photographer bothering students," Sarah replied, forcing her expression back to normal teenage concern. "Security handled it." As the dance continued around them, Sarah realized that her mission was essentially complete. The enemy agents now knew that she was actively protecting her friends, which would deter them from any direct approach. Emma, Jake, and Tyler could continue their normal lives without knowing how close they had come to being pawns in an international intelligence operation. But Sarah also knew that Maya Patel's time at Northfield High School was ending. Having revealed her capabilities to enemy operatives, she could no longer maintain her civilian cover without risking exposure of other naval intelligence operations. The next morning, Maya Patel would receive news of a family emergency requiring immediate relocation. Emma would once again lose a friend to circumstances beyond her control, though this time it would be by choice rather than duty. As Sarah danced with her friends under the homecoming decorations, she allowed herself to imagine what her life might have been like if she had never shown exceptional strategic intelligence, if she had never been recruited by the Navy, if she could have remained just Sarah or Maya or any of the other identities she had worn. But she was Admiral Sarah Chen, protector of national secrets and guardian of innocent lives, and sometimes That meant sacrificing personal happiness to ensure that her friends could continue living theirs in safety and peace. The music played on, and for a few more hours, she could pretend to be just another teenager enjoying her high school years, surrounded by friends who would never know they had been protected by one of the youngest admirals in naval history.